Well, the first thing I want to talk about is a really broad look at the kidneys. And I think some of the things I'm going to say next might surprise you. For instance, right now, 22% of your entire blood supply is in your kidney. It's being filtered right now. So it filters about 1.1 litres of blood every single minute. So that's a lot. So in 5 minutes, your entire blood supply has gone through the kidney, which is why the filtration rate is really important to know and understand. So I'm just going to put an illustration up on the screen, and you will see that the blood, it comes in to the kidney via the renal artery. So that's the one in red. And I want you to understand we're going to go through the functions of the kidney and where it's going to end up. So it's going to end up coming out of the ureter for urine, which is indicated on the drawing as well. So what does the kidney do? Well, the waste goes through the ureter to produce urine, as I've just said. And you've got to remember our bodies produce a lot of waste, and it is the kidneys that filter them. It does have some other things as well that we talk about a little bit in other videos. So it regulates the changes in osmolarity, which is the concentration of chemical particles in the fluid part of the blood. And it changes the acidity. So we often talk about the acidity of the stomach, but the blood is regulated by the kidneys. So when people talk about an alkaline diet or an acid diet or all this sort of thing, it's pretty pointless, because the acidity of the stomach it needs to be very acidic, but the blood needs to be regulated really tightly, and it has a different pH to the stomach. So you can't change the environment of the entire body, because the environment of the body is very different and regulated locally. So the kidneys are very important for the regulation of acidity. So it filters our blood. And again, we're going to be talking about blood and the heart in another video. So I'm going to assume that you understand blood is the delivery system of nutrients and oxygen, and also a way of getting waste out of the cells and into the kidney. So that's what it does. So once the blood is in the kidney, it's going to process it, and it's going to reabsorb some water, and it's going to reabsorb some electrolytes. And what it's doing is, as the blood goes through, it's looking to see what's good in the blood. It's not all about waste. And I think that's one of the things that is not picked up on a lot. And when it is reabsorbed and it's all good, it goes out of the renal vein. That's the vein in blue. And off it goes, and it goes back around the body. So it's got this one input, and then it's got these two outputs. And one is the ureter, and then the other one is the renal vein. And the renal vein will take all those reabsorbed nutrients, send it on its way, which is great. Now, when you're doing a blood test, you look at blood urea nitrogen. Urea ends up being urine, and that is produced in the kidney. And it normally on carnivore, and this is the bit I really want to get to, that goes up slightly on blood tests, but it's not a big problem, because it's well known that if you eat more protein, there's going to be more waste from the metabolism of protein, and therefore your level of urea does actually go up, because you've got more protein breakdown. And many nursing websites and influencers that are really into all this sort of stuff will actually say excess protein, they call it, but we just call it eating adequate amounts of protein, will show up a little bit on your blood urea nitrogen. And we've got a video about the bloods as well. So if you're eating protein to your levels of satiety, listening to your hunger signals and your satiety signals, you shouldn't have a problem. With the general rule of thumb about protein, most people seem to be thinking that you should be having 1 gram for every pound of lean body mass. That's easily coped with by the kidney. And I think in another video we'll be doing about protein as a separate issue, it seems that actually you could probably have at least double that, and possibly even with athletes, we're looking at maybe 10 times as much without a problem. So we'll talk about that in another day. So let's talk about the kidney in a different way now. We're going to talk about the two main functions of it. So if you look at the illustration there, the sort of pyramid shaped things that all go around it are called nephrons, and they're the real functional units. They're the things that do everything. If you hear posh words like the renal cortex in any situation just means the shell, and renal, it just means it's related to the kidney. And if you think you've heard the expression adrenals, that just means on top of the kidneys. All right. So all the phraseology that's used to confuse you, it's really simple. And you might hear people talking about renal medulla or having an issue there, a disease there. Medulla just means middle. So that's just the middle part of the kidney. So the two main functions are filtration. All right. So filtering out the waste products, filtering the important molecules as well, like amino acids, glucose, electrolytes. And they can end up in a filtrate that passes through the kidneys, as we said. And the filtrate can also be the stuff we don't need. And between this job and the second function, the kidneys take our blood and they will also excrete some urine, which leads us to this other function, which is collection. It collects the urine in the renal calyx, it's called. The renal calyxes come together, and they come together in the renal pelvis, which is shown there as well in the drawing. So all that urine is collected, and then it goes out through the ureter, and it goes to the bladder, where tubes or vessels, which are coming out of that area, are called the hilum. So that's explaining that diagram, really. So the kidneys are an important organ for homeostasis, all right? So that's really key. It regulates the fluid balance. So we're always talking about hydration. You don't want to drink too much water. Not enough water is also a problem. And that's why when we talk about the color of your urine, it's really important, because what the kidney is doing is trying to get that perfect balance of like a straw colored urine. This is also where the electrolytes are very important. And again, I'm going to get into the carnivore side of things, because we have a great reduction in carbohydrates. So we have a great reduction in insulin, and insulin has a big impact on the sodium receptors of the kidney. So we lose water. In a good way. It's water that we don't really want to have, so that puffiness or that swelling in our ankles and stuff like that, that tends to go down because there's no excess water, which is being clung on, the body's clinging onto it basically, because there's so much glucose, and glucose attracts water and everything that goes with it. So we have got this fantastic organ there controlling the electrolytes, and then it also controls our blood pressure, and it excretes the right amount of sodium and chloride ions to do this. So we've got lower levels of insulin, which acts upon the sodium receptor, and we've got this. Normally the blood pressure is lower when you start eating this way, and so all of these things are helping the kidney, because these are tough jobs for the kidney. And remember that the removed waste product is called urea, all right, and that becomes your urine. If you're interested in going into more detail, there is quite a lot more detail I could go into, and we'll probably do a sort of companion video to this, but I just wanted people to understand the real basics. As the urine travels down the ureter, it ends up near its evacuation, and this is where men and women are different. Men have a prostate, which is part of the process of producing urine. And that makes a big difference, obviously, to how we operate. The bladder does the same in both. So it has a stretch receptor, and I think it's 300 to 500 milliliters of urine. So when it stretches, that tells you when you want to pee, basically. And this is why for some men, the urgency or the difficulty in peeing could be a problem with the prostate. And then you have a thing called the urethra, which is sort of like spongy, and it's slightly longer in men, which is basically the penis. So your urine meets the outside world basically further away from the body, which is why women tend to be a little bit more prone to urinary tract infections, because all their mechanism is pretty much there and exposed to the air. So the kidneys and the whole process of urine is interesting. It's nice to know the basics, and then, like I say, we will build on this, and we will definitely talk about it in more detail in both like the protein video about absorption of protein and excretion of protein, and also in the blood test section when we talk about creatinine, which is another waste product of protein metabolism, and also how urine is produced from the breakdown of protein. So hopefully that's really covered everything you want to know about the kidneys. But
what about your remark that many people overhydrate and drink too much water?
we talk about overhydrating being a big problem, because once you start to overhydrate, electrolytes and water molecules get together. So if it's trying to excrete water, it's going to take electrolytes with it. And this is the issue where people maybe over supplement with electrolytes as well, because you'll get the same thing in reverse. There's too much sodium, there's too much potassium, whatever, too much magnesium. Therefore, to get rid of that, we've also got to get rid of the water. So it is a fine balance, and that's why we call it fluid balance rather than hydration, because as I spoke to a coaching client today, hydration isn't drinking water, because it's got to be the appropriate amount. And I got tons and tons of information about hydration and athletes. All athletes, when they do tests on athletes at the end of marathons, the ones that win and come in the top 10% are all maybe lost 3-4 pounds of water weight. They're hotter than the rest of the runners, and actually voluntarily dehydration during exercise seems to enhance performance. So everything you've learned about drinking tons of water and stopping at stops for water when you're running seems to not be the case. And I think in 2012 that started to swing back to how people used to run in the 50s and before that, where they believed in running with the dehydration or the voluntary dehydration, which is physiological and is discussed in another section that we've done here in a bit more detail. So I think we need to get away from the 8 glasses of water, definitely, and just drink first. And then that's going to help your poor old kidneys that have got right now 22% of your blood sitting in them being filtered right now.